Yeah, so they came into my business and basically shut me down.
We could talk about the EPA being just like the Gestapo. Someone reports you, and suddenly, everyone's tattletelling on each other to the government, and suddenly the government can come in without a warrant, without any proof, without a witness. They can come in and basically threaten to take away your driver's license if they call them the smoking tickets that people are getting. How can they do this?
We are the Freedom Brothers. Two brothers. One, a successful business owner with a master's degree in engineering. The other, a civil rights attorney. Both devoted to upholding the Constitution, stopping the illegal and relentless government intrusion on our rights, and making government officials pay for their criminal acts. Welcome to this episode of Diesel versus EPA Terrorism. On June 7, 2019, the EPA released its National Compliance Initiatives for 2020 through 2023. The new initiative is Stopping Aftermarket Defeat Devices for Vehicles and Engines. In other words, they are coming after the diesel aftermarket specifically.
Yeah, so I had a customer call in, and he informed me that he had dropped a truck off in North Carolina in a performance shop, and he made a cross-country run, and then was informed when he was halfway across the country, the shop was seized by the EPA. They were shutting him down. His truck was there. They tracked him down because customer information, and he had to come immediately to get his truck and be interviewed. Upon arrival, he was interrogated for a couple hours, and upon release, they gave him his truck in a non-working fashion, and he had to latch onto a trailer and haul it back home cross-country. Yeah, the unfortunate thing is they kept his parts. I mean, it's stuff that was paid for, kept the parts, so he doesn't have that, and had to go take it home cross-country. The EPA sees just shutting down shops, prevent people, enjoying their vehicles.
The aftermarket industry has been shaken, shocked, and a lot of companies are on the brink of dying if they haven't already gone out of business because of what the EPA has done. They are coming into shops and they're attacking them. This has been a devastating blow to anyone trying to do anything to their truck, or anyone that services or provides products that help the aftermarket performance of these diesel trucks across the nation. There's been shops that they've gone into across the board. Almost anyone that that owns a diesel shop or a performance shop that deals with diesel, they've actually had the EPA come in and try to destroy them. What they do is they extort them, claim all these legal, criminal, civil things are going to bring against them, to the point to where the company has to either settle with them or go out of business. Either way, they end up paying them money, paying them fines, paying them penalties, and agreeing not to sell certain defeat devices again, meaning tuners, things like that,
or delete devices, or delete devices.
Yeah, and would you talk a little about the delete devices and the emissions?
I will. Let me real quick say, stick around though, because during this show we're going to show you how, when this happens, we can actually win the war they've waged against the diesel industry. We're going to show you how the agents that are doing this are violating, they are the actual criminals here. They are violating your rights, and in doing so, they become personally liable. And when they become personally liable, this means they personally can pay you when they come destroy your life, and they may even go to jail for doing it. So you were asking about the emissions devices.
Yeah, speak to that just a little bit.
Yeah, let me first say the emissions devices essentially are two main things. It's the EGR, the exhaust gas recirculation devices, which basically push your exhaust back in your intake. Think of it as putting a tube from your butt to your mouth and breathing in your own fart. That's essentially what your truck is doing when they do this. The second thing is their particulate filters they're putting, which is essentially a type of catalytic converter that they're basically putting in your exhaust, which is a filter that requires a certain amount of temperature and stuff in order to work properly. Otherwise, they plug up. So it's really interesting that the OEM is the only people that can put these things on the truck, meaning they have a monopoly on this, and they're teaming up somehow with the EPA to force you to, number one, have these things on your vehicle, which cost a ton more money when you initially buy the vehicle. And secondly, once your vehicle's out of warranty, they're going to cost you thousands of dollars. We just had a quote of a person that their turbo went out on a Dodge pickup, a 4th-gen Dodge pickup. Their turbo went out, their particulate filter was plugged. It was $9,000 at the dealer they were trying to charge them to replace the particulate filter, a couple of sensors, and a turbo on a truck. $9,000, guys.
Wow. So you said something interesting there that I think everyone needs to understand. You just said that the OEM is the only OEM, meaning the original manufacturer, like you're talking about the Ford, Chevy, Chrysler. They're the only ones under this government regulations, EPA, these rules and regulations that are allowed to make parts for your truck.
Well, that's sure what it has the appearance of, you know.
That sounds like a little bit of collusion, maybe conflict of interest, cronyism,
Conspiracy.
maybe conspiracy.
Oh yeah, real quick, let me just go over what the stuff that they've put in your vehicle does. Okay, now you tell me why they would do this. The EPA is there to protect the environment, or quote, protect the environment
per se.
But when they put a device on your vehicle that makes it go from what would be about an 18 to 20 mile a gallon vehicle, and it reduces it to 10 to 13 miles a gallon, you burn more fuel. You're going to consume more fuel doing that. Doesn't that put more stuff into the atmosphere? The other thing is these emissions devices, right? And I mean, it can be argued, a lot of things can be argued on emissions devices, whether or not they actually do what they say they do. But the fact is, they don't have the right to come in and regulate your property. And we're going to discuss this in a while. We're going to talk about how the amendments to the Constitution are being completely violated by these people. And we're also going to talk about what you can do if they come in your shop, if they pull you over, if they do stuff like that, what can actually be done to protect your rights against these EPA terrorists. And that's exactly what they are.
Well, yeah. And I mean, if you look at the situation, anyone right now that's in the diesel market or industry at all, meaning if you're a consumer, if you are someone that's making products or selling products, or if you're servicing those type of products, there has been a shock and a fear put throughout the whole community. People are afraid. They feel like they are no longer living in a free society. They feel like they're doing something criminal. What I think people don't understand is, and the point we are going to drill into your head, we are not giving legal advice. First off, this is not legal advice. Don't take it as such. Under the protection of the First Amendment, we are merely exercising our right to speak, discuss, and express our own convictions and opinions freely that we feel are important for all men and women to know. Everyone in this land is more free than they have been brought up to and led to believe. We have rights, and those rights make us more powerful than any government agent that wants to come in and step on our rights and try to boss us around and try to make us feel like we live in Nazi Germany or Soviet Union Russia.
Have a Gestapo over us.
Yeah, I mean,
we could talk about the EPA being just like the Gestapo. Someone reports you, and suddenly, I mean, everyone's tattletelling on each other to the government, and suddenly the government can come in without a warrant, without any proof, without a witness. They can come in and basically threaten to take away your driver's license if they call them the smoking tickets that people are getting. How can they do this? How is this even allowed under the Constitution? We're going to show you it's not, right?
Yeah, and what's happened is no one understands their constitutional rights. Very few people. A recent poll conducted showed that 37% of Americans could not name any of the 5 rights protected by the First Amendments. Not a single one. No one cares about their rights anymore. But because you don't care about your rights, you lose them. Because if you don't invoke your rights, the government agents will walk all over you like they have been doing for years and years and years now. And it's time it stops. And you can stop that just by invoking your rights if you know what they are.
Hey, do you mind really quick? I just want to read, in the Revolutionary War, it was fought over the fact that we have certain rights and liberties, right? Let me just read this part of the Declaration of Independence. It says, that we are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Did you know the pursuit of happiness was initially put down as the pursuit of property? Property ownership was fundamental, but because slavery existed at the time and slaves were considered property, they did not put that in as property because they did not want to tie the hands later of people from bringing slaves under the Constitution, because they knew that eventually would happen. But fundamental to the Constitution was property ownership, and it started with the Declaration of Independence.
It has been established since then, though, that pursuit of happiness does include private property and the ownership thereof.
Oh, yeah. Supreme Court decisions all over the place have decided that. Hey, let me read one other. Do you mind if I read one other point out of the Constitution?
Please, go ahead.
All right, this is out of the Declaration of Independence. Remember, the Declaration of Independence is the reason, the why the Constitution occurred. It's the why, the Constitution is the how. But let me read this real quick. So further down in the Declaration of Independence, it says, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government. We're not going to try to form new government. We've got a great government. We've got a great Constitution that protects us, but we do have a government that's run amok and getting out of control, and we're going to show you how to put the reins back on this government and bring them under the Constitution.
And I guess
go ahead.
The question is, like, how do we do that? And we know exactly how to do that. Here's a quote from Thomas Jefferson: bind down the public officials with the chains of the Constitution. Do you know that every government official employee, that includes the EPA terrorists, that includes the IRS, that includes police officers, court clerks, judges, even attorneys, did you know that they all are required to take an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution? Now, first act of Congress after ratification of the Constitution, the first bill that our great President George Washington signed in to effect was requiring, and you can look this up, to require every government official or agent to swear an oath or an allegiance to the Constitution, an oath of office. And that was later codified under U.S. Code also. And later on, I'm going to read that to you. What exactly is the oath that these people have to take? But what's important for you to understand is they sign a contract. They take an oath saying, I will uphold the Constitution.
Hey,
Now,
let me ask you this. What happens if they violate that oath? What can be done?
Well,
what can you do if they violate that oath?
there's a Title 42 under the U.S. Code, Section 1983. You should know this. You should almost memorize it, because it says that any government official, if they violate their oath of office, if they step outside the bounds. See, the Constitution isn't made to limit us. It's made to put bounds on the government so they don't step outside those bounds and intrude on our liberties and rights.
That's right. It says we the people. We're addressing us to them in the Constitution, right?
Exactly. And the second they step outside those bounds, then under Section 1983 of the U.S. Code, Title 42, then they could be held personally liable civilly and criminally. Yes, you heard me, criminally.
Tell us what that means really quick. What does civilly mean?
Civilly means they could be held responsible to have to reimburse you, to pay you back for the wrongs they've done. You can bring a tort claim against them. You can sue them for fraud. You can sue them for violating your rights.
Tort meaning personal injury, right? So if they've injured you, they're liable. Let me ask you this. I mean, your background is you're an attorney. You're a lawyer, right?
That's correct.
Over the last couple of years, you've kind of had an awakening, haven't you? Why don't you tell us just briefly about that awakening you've seen that you wish you would have had in law school?
I went to law school with the belief and the thinking that I was going to understand the law, and it was going to give me this power, this way of defeating evil, defeating wrongs. I thought I was going to know what I could do as far as what the law said. I thought I was going to know my freedoms. You know, I was so wrong, because I took a constitutional law class, and I thought, you know, probably everyone thinks, oh, attorneys go to law school, they study the Constitution. You're going to take this constitutional law class, you're actually going to study the Constitution. Unfortunately, that was not the case. We maybe read a few amendments, but really, we mostly just studied some main cases. that the Supreme Court had come down with. And these cases, a lot of what we studied was even the dissents that didn't even matter, that didn't even establish anything.
We did not learn the Constitution. Attorneys aren't trained to practice the Constitution. I was shocked.
Hey, just want to quickly send a shout out to another one of our sponsors, the freedom-loving guys over at Diesel Power Source. They now have the amazing new Turbinator VGT Turbo, the fastest spooling and cleanest performance turbo on the market. If you need cooler EGTs and quicker spool up, check out dieselpowersource.com. That's dieselpowersource.com.
You know, back in 1803 or 04, I can't remember because I'm not looking at my notes correctly here, but there was a case called Marbury versus Madison, and it supported the supremacy clause that's in the Constitution, and it says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That
in fact, real quick, that's essentially what the 14th Amendment says which was established after the Civil War, after the states had been violating the rights of people and not looking at the Constitution, right? The states were basically usurping authority and going outside of their rights on the Constitution. The 14th Amendment actually told the states that no, any local government, any state government has to be within the bounds of the Constitution. If they violate those, that the Constitution is supreme, that it reigns authority over that. Basically, any law that doesn't fall within the Constitution is repugnant to it, meaning, what does that mean?
It was established in Marbury versus Madison when it said the Constitution of these United States is the supreme law of the land. Any law that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Repugnant means goes against. Null and void means it doesn't exist. It's not legal.
Okay, so let's go from this standpoint. So when a government official, and we're going to talk about the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment here in just a second, but when a government official, do they have the right at any point without a warrant to walk into your shop or pull you over and look under the hood of your truck, or to do any of that without a warrant?
They have no right to do that. They have no right. They have no right because what they're doing, they're basing it off of these statutes. They're basing it off of these rules that legislatures have made, that maybe even federal laws have made. But if you go back to what I keep talking about, Marbury versus Madison, and you talked about the 14th Amendment, it says that basically any statement within any law which is passed is unconstitutional. If it's unconstitutional, the whole law is unconstitutional. And Marbury versus Madison has never been overturned. It's been cited in thousands of cases. It's never been overturned. The Supreme Court has held the following, in fact: no state shall convert a liberty into a privilege, license it, and attach a fee to it. Now, what does that mean?
Wait a minute. They do this all the time. They charge us licenses to have a concealed carry permit, to travel.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? How can they do that?
Because little by little, piece by piece, we've been so busy in our lives, we've allowed our rights to slowly slip away. And they haven't slipped away. What's happened is we've allowed ourselves to not understand where our rights are
and how to properly assert them,
and to hold the government's feet to the fire.
Hey, to that point, I heard a Diesel podcast the other day. It had some people on there that were talking about they had a shop and the EPA had come in and they had taken all their invoices, and they had gone through and they had come out and find them. And the guy says, I told him I didn't even know I was a criminal. I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. And I was just trying to help people out. And I'm glad they finally had their attorney explain to me what my rights were and what what the law was. Their attorney.
Who's their attorney? The EPA's attorney?
The EPA's attorney. They were saying this, and I thought the whole time I was listening to this, I was pulling my hair out, thinking these people do not know their rights. They are not a criminal.
No.
Let me explain to you this. Under the Constitution, only criminal act you can commit. There's two criminal acts. One is treason against the country. No one's going to commit that we know of. The average person that's not going to, not a spy or something. The second is you are free to do anything you want to unless you violate the rights of another person.
Well, it all comes down
or
to common
breach
law.
a contract.
Yeah,
Under common law. So
we're
what I'm
based
saying,
on
though,
we're based on common law, and the Supreme Court's established that many times over, that our law is based on common law, which means as long as you don't harm someone, you are free to do what you want, like you said, and you can't do anything inherently evil. You can't rape or hurt someone. You can't contract to do that stuff either. But as long as you keep it within the bounds of normal society and you haven't hurt anyone, you have not done anything wrong. Now that goes against every traffic violation and every traffic law. That goes against every EPA regulation that we know we think is the law of the land, which isn't. But if you think about this and you think, even if you were driving a car and you cut across the lane and didn't use your blinker, now think, have you done any harm? Have you hurt anyone? The cop pulls you over. The police officer is a government official that's taken an oath of office to uphold the Constitution and defend it. He pulls you over. And what have you done wrong? You haven't harmed anyone. He says, let me see your license registration. And what's the first thing you do? Oh, here it is. And or he says, what were you doing? You open up your mouth and you say, blah, blah, blah. I cut across the lane. All of a sudden you start testifying against yourself. You know, under the Fifth Amendment, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to testify against yourself.
Nor should you, because anything you say can and will be used against you.
If you haven't hurt anyone by crossing that lane without putting your blinker on, why are you getting punished? Now, if you went across that lane and you hit someone, or you caused someone to go off the road and they wrecked their car, then you've caused some damage and injury. Then the right thing to do would have the cop come, and then you would have to make up for that. You would have to,
but not to the government,
not
to the individual you harm.
Exactly. You would have to usually compensate them. You know, common law goes back to the law of Moses. The law of Moses, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, that didn't mean that you were going to go and if you lost your eye, someone took your eye, you're going to take someone else's eye out. It didn't mean you're going to knock someone else's tooth out and take it if they took yours. What it meant was, if you poke someone's eye out or you hurt someone, you had to make up for it something of equal value. And if that was
reparation, right?
The
law of reparation.
If you were going to be their servant, or if you were going to pay them with a sheep or two sheep or whatever it was you had to do to make up for that, that's what you did. And that is what our common law is based on.
Well, and this is what they enforced. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way they enforced it under the law of Moses was, you would go in, let's say you did put someone's eye out, you got in a fight, you put their eye out in a fight. You would actually go to a court of law and where they had witnesses against you, and you would argue as to what this eye was worth to this person. And let's say it was worth $50,000, you had to pay back this eye. And they gave you 5 years to pay this eye back, like $50,000 back to this person. Well, under this law, what they would say is, you can put yourself in servitude and work it off, or you can pay them, $10,000 a year, or whatever it's going to cost to pay back the eye that you hurt of this person. But ultimately, if you don't pay it back, we have a hot iron here. We're going to take your eye out to pay as the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. Well, guess what? You don't have any instances in the scripture where they're talking about your eye being lost, because everyone paid it back. And the government didn't make money on it. The person got compensated for you hurting them. Instead of being able to build these massive court buildings that are being paid for by the people coming in and out and paying fines that are totally illegal.
Well, and the whole prison system, I mean, they're throwing people in prison. They're making a profit off it. That's a whole different topic. But what I'm saying is, even with that police officer, it goes the same with the EPA. They come into your store and that you've done nothing wrong. They have no right, because the law of the land is the Constitution. Where the rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there could be no rulemaking or legislation that would abrogate them. Now, abrogate means repeal or do away with it. A law, a right, or formal agreement. So basically, there's no statute, no law, no local, federal, state, any sort of law or legislation that is more supreme, that supersedes the Constitution. So if you haven't done something to hurt someone, to harm someone, those government officials have no right, absolutely no right, especially because they've taken that oath of office that they would support the Constitution. They have no right to penalize you in any way. Now, if you have, that's a different story. You can go to court. There's due process. And like you said, just like in the law of Moses, the people have a right to go and show how much that damaged product or that damaged part of them was worth, that injury they have. But we have to understand this.
But the government
does not.
The government doesn't have the right to
They
fine
do not.
you.
And to take this back to the EPA and the whole diesel aftermarket stuff that's going on, these shop owners, these poor, hardworking, backbone of America, small businesses that are doing nothing but good, wholesome work and helping construction workers, farmers, people that want to improve their performance of their truck that the EPA emissions have ruined. Their private property is being brought in to these shop owners. These shop owners are doing nothing but contracting and doing good, hard, wholesome work that's making our society move along, that's allowing products to be moved, it's allowing farms to feed the whole country. And these EPA agents are coming into these shops and they're penalizing, and what they're doing is they're self-funding by the use of threats, duress, intimidation, fraud, deception, or in other words, EPA terrorism, to maintain a scheme of unlawful collection of money to extort the private wealth from the hardworking backbone of America. It's despicable. It's so shameful. And really, it's all illegal.
Well, hold on. Beyond that, I want to stop and go back to where you were. So the diesel emissions are so expensive on vehicles. I want to cover this because this goes right into being able to, if you're a farmer, if you're a construction worker, if you use your truck, if you're a truck driver, a hot shotter, if you're using your truck to basically provide your living in some way, those emissions devices are so expensive and so prone to failure on your truck that the second they're out of warranty, you're at huge risk to be paying a ton of money to fix your truck, because those emissions related devices either ruin the truck, the engine, ruin the turbo, ruin the emissions, the EGR leaks into your motor, or the particulate filter plugs up, or your turbo fails. Any of these things that occur are so expensive. You're between $2,500 and $10,000 to repair that vehicle. The average vehicle right now that we're seeing is going out about every 6 months to a year. They're having some major issue. Now tell me, when a truck driver or when a farmer or a construction worker is having to put between $2,500 and $10,000 into their truck every year that normally they wouldn't have had to do, plus pay the additional amount for fuel because they're getting 30-40% less fuel mileage because of these emissions devices, doesn't that directly take from their property, their money as well? Does. So it costs between $2,500 and $10,000 every 6 months to a year on a lot of these vehicles to keep the vehicle running, where if you just delete the stuff off the truck, it would run forever. The trucks run not forever, but I mean, the recommended rebuild on a Cummins is 400,000 miles. It would run a long time, a lot longer than what's required here. Isn't that kind of them holding a gun to your head and saying, you have to purchase this stuff? It absolutely is. They're forcing you to purchase. They're extorting money out of you through these crazy legislative laws that are illegal for you to force you to buy things that you don't want or need.
Well, the EPA's actions are also trespassing. They are trying to administer or control the way you use your private property. Your truck is your private property. And based on what you just said, enforcing the use of these emission devices is also harming you by damaging your property. Your truck is being damaged by this, right? Do you see, when it comes to the EPA's crackdown on the diesel aftermarket, the violation of rights just keep piling up?
Why don't we just mention, let's mention two amendments that really protect you against this. The one is the Fourth Amendment. The one is the Fifth Amendment. So I have this Constitution here that I've put notes all over in, and I'm constantly going to, and I think everyone should honestly start reading these. If they would, they'd start realizing what their rights are. But let me cover the Fifth Amendment. Is basically your right to remain silent is one part of it. It's the due process. So let me read what this is. You don't have to witness against yourself. When the EPA comes to you, or a police officer pulls you over, an agent comes to you and says, I need you to tell me what's going on in your business. Tell me how many people that you've installed this stuff on, or tell me what's done to your truck. You don't have to tell them. You have the right to remain silent. This says that you don't have to witness against yourself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So private property can't be taken without due process. Why don't you tell us what does due process mean?
Well, due process is a fundamental constitutional guarantee that all legal proceedings will be fair, and that one will be given notice of the proceedings and an opportunity to be heard before the government acts to take away your life, liberty, or property. It's a fundamental constitutional guarantee. You have the right, the absolute right, to confront your accuser, be able to cross-examine any witness that you've harmed or that's saying that you've harmed, and you have the total right to defend yourself.
And what about a warrant? Can they come and do this without a warrant?
Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no. They cannot enter, they cannot seize, they cannot arrest, they can't seize you, your papers, persons, or property without a properly signed warrant. The warrant has to be signed by either a judge or a governor, and it has to have attached to it an affidavit. An affidavit from someone who witnessed the crime, testifying under penalty of perjury and unlimited liability that what they are saying is true.
Meaning if a witness has not seen you do something and is willing to testify that you've harmed someone, them or someone else, they cannot get a warrant. And to get a warrant, they have to go to a judge to get the warrant. So when they walk in your building and demand to see your invoices, when they walk in your building and want to go, or they pull you over on the road and want you to pop your hood,
it's even more what you're saying. That warrant has to be specific. It has to tell what exactly they're looking for. It can't just say, oh yeah, we're here to search your building. It has to say, we're here to search your building for these documents or for this device or for these drugs. And then if they do have that warrant, which I've never heard of a case which they have, but if they do have that warrant, blindfold them, walk them to that little thing, and you can show them that. But they won't have that warrant. But if they do not show them and walk them through and give them any more information than what they have that warrant for, that specific information.
So you mean when they come in, what do you say? What do you say to them when they walk in your building or they pull you over and start demanding things?
Well, in each of those cases, they're a little bit different, but similar. First off, I say, do you have a warrant for my arrest? No. Do you have a warrant to search any of my property, persons, or papers? No.
And demand
to see it, and say like, well, then am I under arrest? No. Am I free to go? Because I want to go. You can't come in that's if it's a traffic stop. If they come in your property, you say, no, you're not allowed to come in here. This is private property. This is my property. It's private property. If you have a warrant, you can come in.
Should they say a whole bunch of other things?
No, shut up. Don't answer any questions. Say, I plead the fifth. I want my attorney present. I have the right to have my attorney present. I plead the fifth. And if you don't have a warrant, you're not getting anything. You're not seizing anything. You're not searching anything. They can't search or seize anything without a properly executed warrant.
So they should also claim the Fourth Amendment as well, right?
Exactly.
Now, let me ask you this. Is your property your truck? Is that part of your property?
That is your property.
Is your business your property?
That is your property.
Is your building your property?
That is your property. In fact, even if you are renting it, it is your property because you have a legal right to that.
You have an ownership interest.
It's one of the things that allows you
the
to...
protected clauses of the Constitution, right?
Exactly. All that is your property, and anything on you, your children are your property, your papers, your persons, anything on you is your property. Do not let any government official from here on out search and seize anything of yours, anything, unless they have a warrant.
Now, this is probably, if they were to come into like my business, if they were to get my truck, the first thing I do is I pull out my cell phone and I start recording. And I would tell them, for your safety and mine, I'm going to record this, and I need your agent number or your badge number. I need your position and I need your name, because I charge money for violation of my rights. And I need you to know that I'm recording this, and I need you to know that you're going to be personally liable if you violate one of those rights. And I'm standing on my rights.
And usually I tell them I charge $10,000 a minute for my rights. The clock has already started to tick. Anything this costs me, it's going to cost you a lot more. You're personally and civilly liable. I'm coming after you. And then I say nothing else. Call your supervisor. If you don't believe me, call your supervisor. See if you can come in here without a warrant. Tell them that.
Yep.
Just recently, the Diesel brothers.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute.
That is a prime example of having your rights violated when you've done nothing wrong. Having your property and wealth extorted. They just got fined $850,000 and will probably have to pay millions of dollars in the other side's attorney fees, not to mention their own attorney fees that they'll have to pay for.
They're going to be into this thing, millions of dollars, for doing nothing wrong.
Now, without reading the case, which has been unavailable so far, but without reading this case, it appears that a group of doctors or a doctor organization came against them in a civil action, meaning a business against business, person against person. Then suddenly the EPA jumps on board and jumps into this and wants to collect money from them for the government. And they're claiming that they're polluting the environment, harming the people. Under the Constitution, don't they have to prove that they had an actual claim against them? In other words, prove that they either had signed a contract with them to not do this, or that they had an injured party that they could prove that they had injured. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, that's correct. And they have to, in that claim, they have to prove that you breached a known duty. Now, who knows what the Diesel Brothers attorneys actually advised them to do? I have no idea. However, it's typical in such a situation for an attorney to persuade you to settle or go for a plea deal by admitting you did something wrong, even when the other side is unable to produce evidence that there was actually a person harmed. Show me the evidence that proves emissions, specific emissions, even a particle from a truck deleted by the Diesel Brothers or by someone else was actually the cause of an injury or harmed someone specifically. That would be almost impossible to prove. I can almost guarantee that they did not prove that in the Diesel Brothers case. It's very likely that the judge, EPA, and or other government bad actors involved in that case violated their oath of office and should be held personally liable, both civilly and criminally. There may have even been fraudulent acts committed. Fraud is an exception to everything. Who knows?
Ironically, looking at what this doctor group did in this lawsuit, they apparently towed a truck or trailered a truck the Diesel Brothers had done up to Colorado and ran testing on it to see it smoked and test the emissions being released out of it. Let me ask you this. Were they not polluting the environment, doing the exact same thing by doing that they are accusing the Diesel Brothers of doing? If it's that dangerous, did they not just do the exact same thing? Would they not be as liable for polluting and doing the same thing that the Diesel Brothers are being accused of? A good point. Someone in Colorado should probably sue this doctor group for knowingly using a truck that they allege is so dangerous, the judge found was so dangerous that was polluting the air. Good point. Well, and seeing that the Diesel Brothers were found guilty, couldn't these doctors be found guilty right now also? There might be a lawsuit that someone could bring up against this doctor group and possibly the EPA, whoever ran the test, who was involved in that. If they had a known duty not to pollute the air and they did anyway, looks like you use the same case against them.
But I'm telling you that if the Diesel Brothers knew what we know, what we're trying to tell you, that is the real law, they could have saved a lot of money and pain and maybe put some government employees in jail. It really comes down to the Diesel Brothers didn't know their constitutionally protected rights. And because of that, their rights were violated. They lost a lot of money. And their attorney either didn't know or didn't care to tell them. Either way, their rights were violated.
Isn't there a mechanism to do this that we've actually in studying this for the last couple of years discovered a great mechanism to do this with that we're going to tell them about in later series?
In our next episode and throughout this whole series, we will further break down and explore your rights and how you can protect yourself, property, and business from the EPA terrorism that's going on right now. And by the way, this is not just applicable to people that own diesels. Everyone needs to know the rights. Right now, we do not need to fight this anywhere but in the courts and through the constitutional rights that we're guaranteed. We can do that right now. If we wait too long, our children will have to do it through their blood. There's going to be no other way because we're painting ourselves into a corner. Right now, though, we can do it peaceably. We can do it through the court system. We can do it through what the Supreme Court has ruled on, through common law. We can do it this way if we know how. In our next episodes, we will also help you understand how to personally go after these oppressive government actors and hold them liable when they violate your God-given unalienable rights. If you have been visited by and had your rights violated by the EPA, please send us an email and tell us all about it. We can be contacted at freedomBrosPod@gmail.com. freedombrospod@gmail.com. The information obtained in this presentation is not, nor is it intended to be legal advice. Pursuant to the First Amendment of the Constitution,
We have merely shared information, ideas, and opinions free of government restrictions.
Until next time, remember, we the people are more powerful and free than we've been led to believe. This has been a Freedom Brothers podcast, made possible by the First Amendment. The Freedom Brothers love Silvatize hand sanitizer with the power of silver. Check out Silvatize hand sanitizer. Unlike alcohol-based hand sanitizers, Silvatize continues to kill microbes up to 3 hours after it has been applied. Check it out on Amazon and silvatize.com. silvatize.com. silvatize.com.